Welcome once again to another episode of It's My Turn Now. I am so excited for the guest that we have on today. I've known him for a number of years. As a matter of fact, he was my daughter's pediatrician, and I just am honored to have him on the program. Very knowledgeable. There's so much to him, and this time I'm just going to just introduce him and present him to you. Dr. Yancey, welcome to It's My Turn Now.
It's my turn now.
Yes, sir, for sure. All right, Doctor, we're going to get right to the chase because you carry so many hats, and I just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm originally from, I'm a product of an HBCU. I went to.
As a matter of fact, okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
I went to Southern University down in Baton Rouge. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I spent my time at Southern, and then I left Southern and went to Creighton University School of Medicine in Omaha, Nebraska, and then came to Indianapolis in 1976 to do the residency at Riley Hospital. And at that time, I was somewhat of a novelty there because no African American resident had completed the program there. I was the first one there, and that was very interesting to be there for those years. And I had always planned to go back to the South. But after I was here for those 3 years at Riley and just kind of fell in love with the city of Indianapolis and decided I would stay. So my wife and I decided we would just stay here. And I always wanted to practice in an area where what is traditionally called underserved. So I could take care of children who did not have many times the same economic opportunities as others, but I wanted to provide a top level of care for those children. And so, I did end up being right down kind of in the downtown area, started off as on 24th and Capitol, really small office, then went to 1815 Capitol, which was much bigger, but then Methodist tore that building down. And so now I'm at 32nd and Meridian, but I'm still, for the last 42 years, been I'm blessed enough to be able to stay healthy and still keep taking care of kids in that area. And I've got all socioeconomic levels of all the children, races, creeds, colors, whatever. I got everybody, but I still want to remain accessible to those kids who could not get to other places. And I've been blessed to be able to continue doing that. So,
right. Thank you. So we're going to get into you sharing us information regarding, there's a lot of questions that a lot of people are having regarding COVID and kids. And we talk a lot about adults, but interesting about kids. But before we go into that, Doc, there are a lot of other things you do. I have the pleasure of visiting the play Upon This Rock.
Okay.
and you, thank you, Sister Shirley Walton, for sharing Upon This Rock, and tell us your affiliation with them and how you got there and what do you do with them.
Well, I've been a part of the Upon This Rock cast for probably 20 years or almost for a number of years. Way back when they were at Clues Hall the first time, probably 20-some years. My wife became involved, and so I went to and she was there before I was, and so she had a role. She played the part of Martha, and so I went to watch the play, and I saw it, and I go like, wow, this is really nice. I like this, and so. The next year I said, how do I audition for it? So it just so happened that I auditioned, and Pastor A. Thomas Hill and Sharon were in charge of it, and so I auditioned for the role, and the role came open of Pontius Pilate. Yes. And so I read for that role, and they said, well, this is great. This is fine. Well, it just so happened a couple of weeks after that, they ended up coming to a church service where I was, and I had to sing a solo at that program. So they heard me sing and said, you know what, we're going to change this to a Pilate singing role. So, Pastor Hill wrote a song for Pilate to sing there, and that kind of evolved through the years. We later we changed that one out and did another one, and so I felt like the scene needed to speed up a little bit, so he allowed me to. I worked on one and wrote one for the one that's in the present scene now. I wrote for that, almost like the opera scene for that Pilate scene. So I've been with Up on This Rock for a little.
You say you wrote it? Yeah. Well, I'm correct in here. You say you wrote it yourself.
I wrote that.
You wrote it yourself.
Yes, the song "Torn."
Wow.
That is, that they back and forth between Pilate and his wife and Jesus, and I wrote the song for that scene. Yes.
So you're a pediatrician, you're a singer, you're an actor, and you're a writer.
Yeah, well, now I'm almost through, but I recently finished my first fiction novel. Okay,
Okay.
that was released last month, and so yeah, I do some writing now. I write some things for like a Facebook post as well, but this is a full length fiction novel that I finished last month, and it is about a retired molecular biologist who encounters a global pandemic and how he reacts to how the reaction it has on his family. So it's called a medical thriller. It's in that category, a medical thriller, and it just hit the shelves like last month. So we'll see
So
what happens.
if someone wanted to get a copy of that, how can they get that?
Well, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble website, and it's on bookshop.org.
Okay.
Bookshop.org, Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Very good, very good. I saw that book and I said that's a very good book for me to add to my collection.
See, go ahead and add it.
Yes, sir.
Amazon has it back in stock. It sold out twice, so they have it back in stock now, though.
That's awesome. Sold out twice, my Lord, from Amazon. That's saying something right there, isn't it?
Well, I just kind of put it out there, and I guess people want to say, "What does he got to say?" And so that's what.
Yeah. That's excellent.
Thank you.
Trying to give a few more people a chance to come on. Sometimes we have a problem getting it to go public, so it takes a little while. So hopefully, if you're on here, please share this right here. Call your friends up because we want to hear from Dr. Yancey regarding the climate and the culture regarding kids and this COVID situation. And you have more of an insight. I guess we just go right into it. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, a lot of times they're saying, there's some controversy about kids wearing masks in school, younger kids. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay. Well, I think that one of the things, I think early on, there was a lot of confusion about what exactly was the best, method to take. Anytime you have a new, what we call a novel virus that comes up, nobody knows it. Okay. Anytime you have something like that to come up, what science does, it has to keep learning what works and what doesn't work.
Exactly.
And so it's not a matter of day one, okay, here's everything that works and this is great. So we still continue to have an evolving knowledge of what happens with this thing because it's never been here before. So early on, we felt like there was, could be droplet spread as well as respiratory spread. So they said, the thing to do is if it's droplet spread, let's go ahead and limit the amount of droplets that one person can pass to another. And so they said, how would you do that? Well, you can stay a certain distance away, and by the time the droplets travel through the air, they'll fall. Or you can actually wear face coverings, and so then the face cover catches a large amount of what's expelled from the mouth and nose. And so if it was a reasonable thing to do for adults, it stood to reason that it would be reasonable for children too. Well, once that got started, and like a thing of, well, our kids are going to suffocate. The kids, can't see people smiling, which there's really not been documented anywhere of any rebreathing of carbon dioxide in children. It's not totally occlusive, so the children can breathe through it pretty easily. But it has been shown that it does tend to decrease transmission. I want to say that nothing completely stops. Nothing in life is 100%. Okay, nothing stops everything. But it does significantly decrease the transmission. And I like to always say that every year there are children who succumb in car accidents who are safely strapped in car seats. Okay, the accident is just so bad that they die. But it doesn't mean because that happens that we shouldn't use car seats. And so I think that the preventive measure of some of the things that we get judged by the fact that is it 100%? Well, nothing's 100%. But the masks have been shown to be effective in decreasing the spread. And therefore, I think that when you have a situation of something like this, anything that you can do to decrease the spread is beneficial.
So I'm going to ask you, Doc, because you mentioned dropless, and maybe someone here that may not specifically know what you're talking about when you say dropless. So can you just share a little bit more what you meant by that?
Well, if you kind of hold your head up and you feel a sneeze coming on, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and you sneeze into the air, you're going to see a lot of things fly out from that sneeze. You're going to see that. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, let's say you have, and those are droplets. Droplets are coming out. They're
Mm-hmm.
particles of a certain size, usually big enough to reflect light that you can actually see them. But on
Okay.
the other hand, if you're talking about aerosols, some of the aerosols are so small you can't see them. Okay,
Okay.
and therefore you could cough and you don't see anything come out, but you did spread that out, and it actually spread out through that. So there's droplets and there's aerosols, which are much smaller particles. The problem is that many times the virus actually rides on the droplet. So it's not, so even though it can be spread by aerosol spread, which is in many cases small enough to get through the mask or the face coverings,
Mm-hmm.
you still decrease the amount that you take in because those viral particles riding on the droplets then can't get through. So you can
Okay.
decrease the spread by t- by by minimizing what gets through on the droplets. Although you want 100% get rid of everything that could potentially get through the mask.
Okay. Let me ask a question because you and I spoke earlier. We talked about the challenges that people are having when it comes people. There are some that are totally against the use of the mask. Have you found some resistance in your practice with your parents or kids not wanting to wear the mask?
Well, I've run across a few parents who kind of didn't like it, but I'll tell you, since the beginning of the pandemic, and of all the children we've seen, school age children or whatever, all the ones I've seen, I've not had one child to complain about the mask. Not
That's
one. Not one.
so. It's not the kids, it's the parents.
Well, I think that the kids kind of take the cue from it.
Hmm.
And so certainly, if the parents are really adamant about not wearing them, the child's going to pick up on that for sure.
Right.
So far as them complaining, I mean, they come right in. They got the little mask on. They sit there. They talk to me through the mask. But I have not had one child yet to say, "Dr. Yancey, I just hate wearing this thing." They just don't say it. They just put them on, and it's part of what they do.
Very good.
Part of what they do.
As Buff says, my turn said great and useful information. Again, thank you, Brother Ezra. Again, those on here, please share it. If you have any comments, please feel free to type a comment or click on the link that's right before us right here. You can click on the link and you can join us live. For some reason, people are a little reluctant to join us live, Dr. Yancey. Most people are would do like Ezra did. My wife, she says, you're still looking young, Dr. Yancey. Still looking
Well,
young.
thank you very much. I've been blessed to stay healthy. I when the pandemic first struck out, every morning I would play "Thou Art a Shield for Me,"
Right.
lifter up of my head, and I would play that song, and I would play it, and play it, and I went into playing "Lord Be a Fence All Around Me" every day. So I've been praying straight through this pandemic, and
Right.
have been tremendously blessed, not to have been affected. So I appreciate that.
Right.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful.
You know, and I think it's beautiful to have a doctor who has a relationship with God to the point that he knows where his help is coming from, and that you know that you lean on God. Have you had some situations that have affected you so adversely that just cause you to shake your head in your practice?
I think that whenever, of course, I know I'm prejudiced about children, and just love children. That's why I do this.
Mhm.
But whenever I see
Right.
situations where the welfare of children is not considered, okay, then those things are very distressing. They're very distressing from the
Right.
standpoint of, wait a minute, these are children. And what are some of the situations? Long before COVID, there were situations where there were, let's say, custody disputes, where the
Hmm.
children were literally used as a battering ram to batter the other one.
Right.
And there's an old African proverb that goes, when elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers most. And so I
Right.
watched, as some of the children just suffered through these bitter battles, in some of the divorces. I thought that was really a problem, really a problem. I've now seen, we become, fast forward to where we are now, and I see situations where I see parents who are really bitterly arguing against certain, mandates and things like that. And I have to sometimes wonder, is it really about the mandate, or just kind of like you just would rather nobody tell you what to do? But let's say, for instance, that wearing the mask in schools could decrease the spread of COVID and save, let's say nationwide, we're going to save, 100 kids. Okay. Wouldn't that be worth it? I mean,
Mhm.
wouldn't that truly be worth it?
Exactly.
Because I also run into situations where people talk about, well, just a few kids die from COVID and not many, get horribly, horribly ill, not like adults
Mhm.
and whatever. Well, two things come to mind there. Number one, a small percentage of a very large number is still not good. And the other thing is that I've never run across, when you talk about just a few or only a few, I've never run across parents who felt like their child was just or only whatever. It's like the only means a lot. If it's only a few, if your child is one of those few, that means a lot. And so when I see people who kind of don't consider what this could
Right.
possibly mean to children, I have a problem with that.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, and I think it's really sad that, uh, you know, I deal as a therapist. I actually deal with kids and some of the anxiety uh, that the kids are experiencing. And I imagine, Doc, that when the kids want to come to school and the parents are ones creating the anxiety in the kids, when the kids, put in their mind, God bless you, Brother Kevin Jones, when the parents put it in their mind, the mask and the safety of the mask. Most of the kids, like you said, they're comfortable with, but there's so much anxiety that are placed upon the kids. And how do you address that when you see kids that you come that come to your office? Are you able to recognize when the kids are dealing with anxiety? And even kids, I've had young kids as young as 4 or 5 years old deal with depression to a certain degree.
Oh, depression and anxiety have
Are you able to
skyrocketed.
recognize that in your?
We're looking at probably, when you look at serious depression, anxiety episodes into emergency departments in children's hospitals, they're up about 33% from where they were before, pre-COVID. And so when I recognize this,
Right.
I just have to, let the parents know that, okay, you can fight about this if you want, but you can't fight about this in the presence of your child because they're totally confused. Let me just say for,
Right.
and I forgot to say how long the program is. I don't want to just talk about it, but I said, is it an hour, half hour?
Take your time.
Okay,
It's about an hour. Sometimes we go, it just spins, but
okay,
it's
gotcha.
your turn now, Doc. That's a program call. It's your turn. So
All right, good,
if you
good, good.
say I'm gonna take over, we're gonna go longer, I just have to say it's your turn.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm from Baton Rouge, and one of the things that we had down there when I was growing up was hurricanes. Okay, obviously they still have them.
Mhm.
Okay, but I remember a lot of the named hurricanes from when I was very very young. Hurricane
Mhm.
Audrey, Betsy, Donna, Carla,
Mhm.
Camille, all those came
Mhm.
through, and every time a hurricane was coming, there was a considerable amount of anxiety
Mhm.
about what was this hurricane going to tear up this time, and
Right.
we never evacuated or anything, so we'd be in there, we'd hear the wind flapping my old tin top roof and the whole bit, and it was something else. It was very frightening. But what was different was my folks could tell me, my mom and dad could tell me when that hurricane would be over. Okay, so
Right.
they'd say the hurricane's going to hit tonight and
Mhm.
it's going to be really rough. It's going to be a lot of noise. We go hunker down in the beds and the whole bit, or under the beds, wherever we were. It's going to be, but by morning it's going to be gone. So it's going to be gone in the morning. So no matter what happened that night, no matter what happened to that night, with all the winds, the rains, the power lines that would come down, and you hear them just crackling like whips on the outside,
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
sparks flying, everything. We knew that the hurricane would be gone in the morning. And
Mhm.
so we could bank on that. Okay, that's what Mama said. Hurricane's gone in the morning. We're ready for it. Well, the
Right.
problem with COVID has been we couldn't give the children a good idea of when this will be over. Okay, and
Right.
so
Right.
therefore, when you have unlimited anxiety, and amorphous anxiety, where you say, this has no structure. It's just out there. I can't go to school. Like, we can't go to the movies. We can't do anything. And the kid says, well, when is this going to be over? And everybody says, I don't know. I don't know. Okay. And so that really just shoots the anxiety meter through the roof, because they can't see an end to it.
Right.
Even in the scriptures, it says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning.
Okay? Right.
COVID didn't leave in the morning. Okay.
No, sir.
And so therefore, and then on top of all that, at the same time, the racial divisions and things that were going on, at the same time COVID was hitting. And so the children would just throw up their hands like, wow, what is going on here? Because everybody was in a different place. Schools were closed. I mean, their lives were just completely, in upheaval. And so I think that's one of the things that added to it. Then, we look down the horizon and we say, oh, wow, we've developed a shot that is a safe shot, and effective shot. We can get rid of this thing. Okay, we can get rid of this thing. But because of, various forms of misinformation, mistrust, and whatever, we have huge numbers of people who don't take the shot. Okay. And so now it just continues to linger on. I look at it like this. I think that if we view COVID as the evil Superman who came in and said, hey, I can just write, we had the kryptonite. Okay? We had the kryptonite in our hands.
Right, exactly.
And we didn't use the kryptonite. We didn't effectively use the kryptonite. And so no matter, we've been using vaccines to fight illnesses for decades. When I was a resident, and even in my first years of practice, every year we lost children to meningitis, caused by pneumococcal, streptococcus pneumonia, pneumococcal vaccine. We lost them from something called Haemophilus influenza type B. Those meningitis so bad that some of the ones that didn't die were left blinded and deaf and horribly, with seizures and all sorts of stuff, because meningitis is so bad. By the time you feel like you're getting sick, you're already on your way out. And so that's how fast it can actually hit a child.
Right.
So then we came up in 1985 with the H flu vaccine, in 2004 with the pneumococcal vaccine, and these diseases just went away. They went away. They had nowhere to go. They went away.
Right.
Children were immune to them because of the shots, and they went away. And so, but what we ran into was very few, extraordinarily few parents who were resistant to the vaccine. They just said, fine, you got a shot for that now? My child won't get this thing? Right. Let's go with it. Same with polio. I'm old enough to have a smallpox scar, from where I got my smallpox vaccine.
Right.
So vaccines have always been the way to get out of widespread deadly diseases, and it's nothing new. But what's new is the approach that now everybody can spread something that is not effectively researched to large numbers of people, and they go like, that sounds good. I think I'll go with that. And that's the problem.
Right. We have Kate Love on here. I'm going to bring her on. I just wanted to say two things. I was at Walmart, and a lady who I had never met, my back was turned to her. She said, I recognize your voice. And she said that, she had seen the program. And so she was saying, she was a therapist. She said, I need some therapy for my son. My son, I guess 8, 9, 10 years old. My son is afraid to leave the house because of the coronavirus. The anxiety level was so concerning to him that he was afraid to leave the house. And I imagine he's not the only child that, and a lot of this misinformation. But also I was thinking too, I'm going to bring Kim on here. I was thinking too, I went to Nigeria, West Africa, and I took so many shots. I think malaria, I don't know what all shots I had to take to travel over the country. And some of the same people who are talking against the vaccine thing, they've traveled out of the country. I'm sure they haven't traveled out of the country without, taking those vaccines. So I'm going to bring Kay Love on here, and if she's still on here. Kay Love, are you still on here? Hello, Kay Love. She was waiting for quite a long time, so I don't know if she's still there. Okay, last chance. Are you still here? Well, I don't know if
Can
they're
you
trying to
hear
say
me?
something. We can't hear them or
Yeah,
not.
I can hear her now.
I can hear you now. Yes. Welcome to It's My Turn Now. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a
Well, we heard you.
question about my youngest one taking the COVID vaccine once it comes available.
Mm-hmm.
She's 8 years old.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that I certainly
And
do
what's the question?
recommend.
Is that
I'm
your
sorry.
question? You want to know if it's okay? Is that what your question is?
Yes,
Is your
yes. I have
question?
my 13-year-old did take the vaccine.
Yeah. Okay. I can handle it. The reason it's taking a little bit longer for the younger children is because we have to do a number of slightly different trials than they did with adults and the older kids. They basically adults. They said, okay, here's an adult. This is the dose we'll use. So we already know about the safety of it. What we now have to come up with is what's the lowest dose you can use that still gives you a response? Because in children we always want to use the lowest effective dose of anything. And so once they're still working through that, and they're pretty close to being done, okay. But once they come up with that, then that'll minimize side effects while still getting the same effect, the same immunologic effect. So yes, I think that it's very appropriate to go ahead and immunize the younger children once we have that effective data. If you look around, there are tons of pediatricians and other docs as well who've got younger children who are racing to sign them up for the trials, racing to say, put my child in this, because they realize the safety of it, and they realize the fact that the unpredictability of a younger child getting wild COVID. So yes, it is safe, it's effective. When it comes out, they will have done testing on dosage levels and things like that. And so yes, I would wholeheartedly recommend it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Doctor. About what are the numbers or statistics of kids who have actually caught COVID? And what age range have you seen of kids with COVID?
Well, we've seen all the way down to infants, and I can't give you the very latest numbers at this point. But we've got somewhere around we've got a few. I mean, we got a number of kids who have something called MISC, multi-system inflammatory, condition, involving childhood. So multi-system disease involving childhood, and we've had tons of those. MISC is just a multi-systems disease secondary to COVID. It gives you all type of inflammation, kidney failure, liver failure, brain failures, all sorts of things. And some of them do survive from that. So we've seen we've seen thousands of those. We've had somewhere between 300 and 400 deaths from pure COVID in younger children. But once again, a very small percentage of the overall death rate. But I always preface that by saying, how many kids is too many?
Exactly.
Being a pediatrician, if you tell me, like, let's put it this way. Let's say, for instance, a toy came out, and this toy was, everybody, people got it, and they said, oh, I like this toy. If this toy killed 400 kids, had known to kill 400 kids nationwide, that toy would never make the shelves. Okay.
Right. So
when people say, oh, look, only 400 or 500, 300 or 400 kids have died. Okay. Really? Only? And so that toy would never. So now we have a way to prevent those. Okay. It is definitely something that we want to do. It's safe. It's effective. The dosage will be right, because that's what they're working on, to get the lowest effective dose. And I would strongly recommend it.
Okay. Very good. Very good. And so a lot of parents in the news as misinformation. How would you encourage people to deter them from getting that misinformation? What would your advice be to them?
Okay, well, let's face it. From now until eternity rolls, we're gonna. It's out. What is the old saying? The horse is out of the barn now, or whatever. Okay, that used to hear. We're gonna be bombarded now with misinformation of every sort all the time. It's done. There's
Mhm.
never going to be a time when we don't get misinformation again. Okay.
Right.
So what we have to do now, we have to start by teaching children, how do you evaluate what you read? How do you
Right.
evaluate what you saw? Okay. How do you evaluate that? So the statistic I like to quote, even let's say concerning the COVID vaccine, is that nationwide, 96% of physicians who studied this stuff, nationwide, 96% of physicians have either been vaccinated or strongly recommended, or both. And most of it's both. 96%. Okay. So if you say then that 96% of physicians have taken this shot and recommend this shot, then you have to say, okay, so what you're telling me is that of the 96% of tens of thousands of doctors, okay,
Mhm.
they know less than the person who put the TikTok video up. Okay.
Right. Right.
And so, and then you have to ask, does that seem to make sense? Because, one thing about the internet, everybody's voice is as loud as everybody else's. Okay.
Right.
So what you have to look at then, let's look at what the logic is. So
Mhm.
what you tell me, and I had a child today, I said child, 13, 14 years old today, and we were talking about this. And I
Mhm.
said, so you have to tell me which it is. Okay. So I've been doing this for 42 years. I've taken care of you since you were born a whole bit. So in the last few months, since I'm recommending this vaccination, I have either turned incredibly stupid because I don't know what's on, I don't know what they know on TikTok or whatever video you're watching,
Mhm. Mhm.
or I'm just incredibly evil in that I know it, but I just want to hurt you. So which one is it?
Right. Right. Either way is
That's your
bad.
choice at that point. At that point, well, that is your choice. Either I'm incredibly stupid or I'm incredibly evil. So then you have to say, if that's the case, 96% of America's doctors, and I don't know the worldwide figures, but 96% of America's doctors are either incredibly stupid or incredibly evil. Okay, now keep this in mind. When you are in an accident and you break that femur, okay, you're going to go to one of those either incredibly stupid or incredibly evil people. When you
Mhm.
are coughing your head off with a pneumonia of something that's acquired, when you got an appendicitis, you're going to
Mhm.
go to one of those incredibly stupid or incredibly evil people.
Right.
So the fact is, it's not a matter of we don't really trust the medical community to that degree. It's just that we sometimes we like to do what we want to do, and we look for what backs it up. So
Right.
science looks for a problem and tries to find every single way why what I think might be wrong. Okay,
Right.
but as the science says, okay, I think that rain falls from the sky. So what I got to do, I got to find everything else that says rain doesn't fall from the sky. And
Right.
if I find nothing else, then okay, rain falls from the sky. On the other hand, what bad science does is come up with a conclusion and then look for everything to support the conclusion you already came
Right.
up with.
Right. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so what we have to start teaching children is you can't start with the answer and then look for everything that supports the answer you already came up with. Okay,
Mhm.
because then you don't really have science at all. What you have
Right.
is opinion, and you'll only find the people who validate your opinion in the first place. So when
Mhm.
you say, I really think this vaccine is just horrible. So what do? You go to the internet and you find everybody who thinks the vaccine is horrible. And then you say, I did my research. Okay. Now
Right. Right.
you actually just looked up people who think like you think. So
Exactly.
what makes us change our mind? Science has no problem changing its mind when it finds out that something else is actually in play. That's what science does.
Mhm.
We have all kinds of theories. If you go back, 100 years, 50 years, whatever, we got all kinds of theories that
Mhm.
we felt like things, and then we find out more information, and we know, wow, that's not the case. Okay,
Yeah.
even with COVID illnesses, early on, there were certain types of procedures we'd always use in ventilation and things like that. Now,
Mhm.
now we learn, wow, it may be better to use different pressures to ventilate and different things. We learn that. It doesn't mean that they were necessarily wrong. We just didn't have that information. So,
Right.
so if we have to teach children that information is a continually evolving thing, but you can't just come up with an answer and then look for whoever supports your answer and then says, "Ah, this is what it is."
Right. I remember it wasn't until I was in grad school when I took a research class that I didn't realize that Wikipedia was not an accurate source. Anybody can post on Wikipedia. I think,
Right.
unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are getting their information from Wikipedia and just unreliable sources. So,
Mhm.
and people don't take the time to even validate their sources. You
Mhm.
heard this. That's same as gossip. Someone gossip, they'll tell you something. Well, I'll say, well, who do you hear this from?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
where do they get the information from?
Right.
So you can trace if you assertive enough, intuitive enough, you can follow the information, see where these people get information. Is this hearsay or is this valid information? And a lot of people aren't doing that. I have another comment. It's my turn now. What about children passing C-19 to their, or COVID-19 to their elderly relatives? Can you say something else about that?
Absolutely. Well, my hope is that most of the elderly relatives have been vaccinated. Okay, but we already know
Right.
that there's some that haven't, and that absolutely can occur. Now, children don't pass it as much, and they don't pass it as frequently, but they absolutely can pass it. And so, if you
Mhm.
have and the one of the problem parts is that frequently children are asymptomatic. They just don't have the symptoms with that. So this child is not running high fevers. This child is
Right.
not coughing his head off. This child did not lose his taste and smell. But on the
Mhm.
other hand, he's still infected. And so it is very possible that the
Right.
child could be an asymptomatic carrier and actually pass it on to an elderly or compromised relative because of that close contact right there. Absolutely, it can happen. It has happened, and the child will never know that they, helped that they, gave grandpa or grandma the COVID, and that's what happened. And so,
Right.
yes, it definitely can
Right.
happen. So they can be carriers,
So
asymptomatic without being sick.
let me ask you a question now. Here's a little anxiety I have. Like, if I go out to Cracker Barrel to eat breakfast, and I was sitting at the table. All the tables they're right close to you, about a foot apart, and there's some little
Mhm.
kids right behind me. Uh, when should I be concerned with the possibility of getting? But of course, I've taken the vaccine, but I'm still carrying myself as though I haven't taken the vaccine. Doing extra precautions. So when should I be concerned about that? How close should the kids be to me? In a restaurant where I should be concerned.
Well, you can say I may be a little overly cautious, but I'm not really into eating into restaurants inside with children very close to me at this point. And the reason is because
Yeah.
I have to have the mask off the whole time. Okay, if I mask up and around, I'm around
Yeah.
kids every day. Some of them are coughing and sneezing and whatever, but I got my
Hmm.
mask on. I've had the shots, 3 of them. Okay, I got my
Right.
mask on. I'm pretty confident with that. With the mask off, I'm not nearly as confident. So I would say that in situations like that, if I can't really eat outside, I have not been willing to actually eat in around a lot of well, not just children, but people I don't know. I've just not been willing to do
So,
that because
so what do you
it's a
consider as
process of like maybe a half hour, 45 minutes that you're sitting there without a mask on, and this person could be spreading, right next to you could be spreading on
I was at an event on Saturday night, and I was the only person there that had a mask on. There were people sitting around the table and everything like that. And, I felt pretty uncomfortable about that. So, and I'm glad you shared that with me because I'll keep that in mind. So, um, another question is my turn. Christine says, I have missed this, but what are your thoughts on the booster vaccine? I,
you. Well, I think that what we now know is that once again, science is continually evolving, and we
mhm,
continue to learn new things. So, immunity that's provided by a shot, though safe and effective, it
mhm,
sometimes has a tendency to wane off and not give you the same level of immunity that it first did. And so,
right.
what they looked for, they said, okay, we're seeing in some people breakthrough cases, and
Mhm,
they were fully immunized. And so we then wonder if the immunity is waning. And the answer was yes, it did appear to be waning. So to get that level of immunity back to where it's much more protected, the booster shots are indicated. Yes, I definitely believe in one. That's why last Thursday I got mine because that immunity can wane. Now, after this booster and the immunity is boosted again, then it's likely to last a much longer period of time. But if you think about it, even in infants, excuse me, who are 2, 4, and 6 months old, we give a certain set of shots. Okay, we
Mm-hmm.
boost that shot at 15 months of age, and we
Right.
boost it again at age 4. And so because the immunity tends to drift off and it's not as protective as when you first gave the shot. So yes, I wholeheartedly believe in booster vaccines.
So how long after the, I guess in adults, how long after the first shot should you recommend for the booster?
I think the current recommendation is 6 months after the second shot that you can go ahead and get your booster at that point. First it was 6 to 9, but I think that's in 6 months. I think the most recent recommendation has been 6 months after your second one. And they started with the older adults, and that tells you how, us fossils like me, okay?
Right.
Started with the older ones, and so yeah, my second one was in January, so I was able to get mine, and some of it had said 9 months, but it looks like about 6 months after the second one, you should be able to go ahead and get your booster.
So how often do you think we'll have to take a booster shot? Do you have any idea?
I would guess, as if variants continue to come up, this is a wild guess, but I would guess it could be like yearly,
Just like the flu shot.
Yes, because the variants, if you let the virus hang around, and we're certainly letting it hang around. Okay, here's the deal: viruses copy very poorly. They're bad. They don't do well. With what you call it, with clerical things. Okay, so this virus is supposed to copy itself, and it's supposed to copy itself after that. But it messes up when it copies itself. So the virus goes to copy itself, and it goes, oops, it's supposed to be APPLE, and I wrote APPLD, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a variant of the virus. So when the APPLE, say, okay, we blocked that one, but now APPLD comes up and says, oh, they didn't block me, they blocked APPLE. And so it's that slight variation there then makes you sick. So after a number of those, and you get that particular drift of that virus, or shift of that virus, where it now doesn't look much like the APPLE anymore. Now you got to come up with a booster to put in that one to see if you can block that.
Right. We have another comment here. Kimberly says, a question about schools when a child tests positive and other child was around this positive child. Positive child 1 quarantines for 14 days, and the children 2 within less than 6 feet quarantine 2, but the siblings of children 2 doesn't have to quarantine. Can you explain why is that this sibling of the children who was in contact of the positive child doesn't have to be quarantined?
Well, from the very beginning, they had basically said direct contacts, okay? And but not contacts of contacts. If you really look at it, contacts of contacts would be almost everybody on the planet. Okay, everybody has been contacted somebody who contacted somebody who contacted somebody. So it was felt that the rationale was felt that the viral spread would be much more likely to attack someone based on the numbers of the person that was sick themselves. Okay, so if you're in contact with that person who's the primary spreader, then yes, you should quarantine there. But in most cases, unless unless the second case, the one that was that was exposed to the index case, becomes positive, then other people exposed to them would not have to. And the reason for that is that it appears that infectivity is related to how much of a dose of the virus you get. You hear about a lot of people got really sick. You say, what were you doing? Well, I was singing in a choir for 3 hours. Okay. And so you got a huge dose. It seems like that the level of illness you get is related to the dose of virus you get. You get a huge dose of the virus, and you're likely to get very sick. It just overwhelms your system, and you're likely to get very sick. Whereas the person exposed to the person who was exposed to the person, but even if they kind of turned positive, it would be usually much less of an inoculum, less of a dose than this other person who had it in the first place. And that's why we really have not recommended exposure of exposures.
So you mentioned something to acquirers, people saying acquirers, and unfortunately, I've known people who are inquirers who actually caught the COVID. How concerning is that when you're an inquirer, you sitting on on the podium when someone's sitting in the choir. I've seen some churches where they still in the choir singing and they're doing everything, and how concerning should that be?
Well, I think that it's certainly concerning if you have. I mean, it's concerning anyway. But if you got immunized people, it's even more concerning. Okay, because what you're doing. Okay, the singing is an exaggerated speaking and breathing. That's exaggerated. I mean, you're gonna take the deep breaths. You're gonna be forcefully exhaling. You're gonna be, you're just spreading. Okay, and so but the other part of that's particularly problematic, in the course of a service or a song, even, you're going to be for 8 or 10 minutes, even during that song, right in somebody's face, and spewing out loads of virus that person is inhaling in, because they're not singing with a mask on, obviously, and they're breathing in so much of what this person is breathing out. And that's why the singing just exaggerates almost everything. Even talking, in close range can be a problem, but when you're singing, you're expelling things that much further out, you're inhaling that much more deeply, and you're allowing the virus that more access. That's why in some of the early situations, there were choirs that got just really obliterated by COVID. And choir rehearsals and things like that was one of the things that it was like, oh my goodness, it was really bad because of prolonged periods of time, close contact, and a huge level of the dose of the virus.
Very good. I think, I guess the question is too, what are your thoughts on, because of the controversy, some schools are, they're against school boards for mandating the mask, and what is the likelihood of actually them, because I actually counsel parents who were stressed out because they had to work from home and they're not teachers, and they had to fill in for the teacher's responsibility at home because the schools were closed. What are the possibilities of that happening again, where possibly kids will not be in school?
Well, I don't think it'll, and this is a wild guess, I don't have any data to back this up, but I don't think it'll be quite as bad, because we at least do have about 60% of the country now with at least one shot. So that's going to take a lot of people out of the mix so far as being able to spread. Then you got the situation where children are not getting as ill, okay, although some are getting very ill, not getting as ill. But then you've got the situation that it is, we still don't have the amount of testing that we should have. So it's tough to run down some of the cases because you can't, the testing's not available, and so if we had a situation where you could test everybody, like immediately if you needed to, we could say, okay, you got to stay home. But I don't see it going back to where everybody shut down at home again. I think that regardless of what the science says, I just don't see that ever happening again, because it's just politically not going to be acceptable to do it.
Yeah. Jack Mills Tate says, my turn now. It's a safe for choirs to sing with face shields covering their faces.
Okay. The problem with face shields is that there's huge areas around the face shields that are open. Okay. So you've got the face shield that comes to here. And so, yes, you're collecting some of the immediate what's put out from the voice and from the nose and mouth and whatever. But you've got big open areas around here, and everything still can fly out to the sides. Okay. So although it may be, I'll put it this way, it may be better than nothing, it's not much better than nothing.
It's a face shield safer for the person wearing it, or the person who is exposed to that person? Who the protection is, you think?
Technically, I don't think they're too safe at either one. Okay. But because the person wearing it can still breathe in a lot of the air from around that face shield. Okay. And we're not talking about like a few layers of a mask and then things are kind of filtered out. We're talking that's totally open. Okay.
Right.
And the person in that close proximity is then going to be exposed to what, shoots out the sides. So I really have never felt that either one of them was pretty safe.
It's funny you should say that, because I've looked at people wearing those face shields, and I'm looking and I'm saying, now this part's open or this part's open. What about if a person had a face shield and had like the surgical mask? Would those two work together?
Well, that's better. That's better. Okay, but most of your stoppage is going to be. I mean, if you look at ICUs and things like that, they've got the like the N95 mask on and the face shields as well. They got everything they can do to actually protect themselves. So I think if you have one of those really high power masks, that's fine. But there have been a lot of doctors and medical personnel who died just with the because they're in such close contact and who had just a surgical mask. And so now they make every effort to get the much more expensive ones, the N95s and things like that. But if whatever barrier you can put up between yourself and someone else is helpful, they're just degrees of helpful.
Yeah.
And so I think that yes, if you have a mask on and a face shield, that's better than either one alone.
Now, being a minister as well, I go to hospital. I've been to hospital. I remember last year, so they were telling people not even to go to hospital, but I've been to the hospital here lately, and my wife always tells me, she said, double mask. She always tells me the double mask one. So I wear a surgical, and then she makes these cloth masks. What do you think about that?
Well, every day in the office, I actually double mask. I have two of them on every day. Okay. And what it says is, if 3 layers is good, 5 layers is probably better. Okay. So if you have the one mask on and say, okay, I got a triple mask layer on. Okay, that's fine. But if you put another one on top of that, there's less that can get through 5 layers than can get through 3 layers.
Right.
Which is why the way the one, let's say the hospital N95s are made, they're tight. They're tightly woven. You can't get. I mean, it's tough to get really anything through that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say the more layers, generally, the better.
Okay. I had a client of mine that was saying they wore 4 and 5 layers, and I kind of chuckled to myself, but I guess there's some reasoning behind that, huh?
There is. I mean, I have what's called a KN95 that I wear every day, and then a surgical type over that. Okay, so I wear those double masks every day. So I tell people all the time, I'm a 32 person. What is it? What's 32? 3 shots and 2 masks every day.
3 shots and 2. So how often do you change the mask? Once you use them, do you clean them after you use them, or how?
Yeah, I can use the KN95. For we'll do it a few days, and then if it's having to get moist or whatever, then I'll toss it. Now we dry them out, make sure that everything's fine. But I have washed and reused those. Surgical masks on the outside, I can throw those away every day.
Right. Okay. So what were some suggestions would you give some of the parents to reduce their anxiety about the kids?
Well, I think that number one, the best way to protect the children is to get the shot. Okay, that's the best way to protect infants and young children is for everybody in their sphere, everybody around them to have the shot. Because it's proven that not only is the chance of your getting seriously ill much less, the chances of your acquiring it and spreading it is much less. So that's the number one thing you can do to protect your child. The second thing is I still think we have to keep it's still for right now until we kind of figure out where everything's going, keep the circles relatively small. I don't think that if it's really not necessary, big unmasked parties, for instance, like Halloween's coming up, because a big unmasked Halloween party, I couldn't really recommend going to that. I think if you say, okay, we're going to have a Halloween party, it's going to be out in the park, mask are required or whatever, hey, go have fun, no problem. Mm-hmm. Now, will most of the kids get sick? No. Will some of them very possibly get sick? Possibly. And so, but how many is too many? How many is enough? We look at
one is too many.
Yeah, when we build street signs, and I mean when it's dangerous intersections, you say, well, it's a really dangerous intersection. How many people have been killed so far? And they'll say, well, 5 people have been killed. And they go like, man, it's not that dangerous. Yes, it is. Okay, how many is enough? So when every life is valuable, we have to do things that we can do to see if we can protect those one. Because I don't want to be the one, and I don't want you to be the one. And so, I'd say if I still would be, if I was a parent, be very cautious about big uncontrolled gatherings that are unmasked. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people say, well, as long as they're unmasked and they've been vaccinated, they've taken the vaccine, there's no problem with that. What are your thoughts on that?
That kind of goes back and forth. I think that The vaccine has done a tremendous job in protecting against, most of what's out there. There are some that are Delta variants that have managed to cause breakthrough cases of the vaccine, and so and maybe a couple other smaller variants coming through at this point. So until we get, um, my feeling has been, this is just my feeling, until we get large numbers of people, I mean the vast majority of people immunized, there's still people in these crowds that can be not immunized and still could be carrying the variants or whatever, and that would still decrease. Now, I feel much safer with that, but
Right.
but on the other hand, there's still a possibility of coming up with a variant if you're in prolonged close contact with somebody who's got that variant, and you could get sick.
Yeah, and problem is too. The problem is everyone's not honest too. A lot of people say they've been vaccinated, and you can't trust the fact that they've been vaccinated. Skill says, I saw on the news that the recommendation for holiday gatherings is to have a fan in the window for circulation. Have you heard that, Doctor?
I hadn't heard that particularly, but certainly circulating air is always good. I think it's going to be, if you're talking about this holiday, it's not like below zero yet. By Christmas and New Year's, it's going to be tough to put that fan in the window. Okay,
Yeah.
so but on the other hand, anytime you can get, you have a source of fresh air, it's good. But keep in mind that circulating air is good, but if you're in very close contact for prolonged periods with somebody who is infected, there's still a risk. But so far as putting the fan, it won't hurt a thing. But I don't think that should decrease your other precautions. So if you have, I still would be very cautious about large numbers of people that you don't know gathering at your house.
That's true. And I had not heard about that. Actually, I was concerned, thinking that if you were to spread a fan, that would circulate the germs more. So I guess my thing is a little bit different.
Well, you'd have to have like a fresh air. So there's certainly certain big circulating fans in some big arenas and things like that. But they actually have filters going through. So they have filtered air going through.
Okay.
So I think that in a situation like this, I think that's one of those kind of a feel good measure. I don't think but I don't think it does. It's probably not gonna hurt anything, but it probably doesn't do very much at all.
Well, she did add this right here onto that. Said, and
Right.
said,
Yeah.
and wear a mask. I guess circulate. Wear 5 masks.
Right.
And
Well,
the fan. I guess you'll be safer, huh?
yeah, I guess, but it's probably better to just kind of have the group of people that you pretty much know and trust. I just think that prolonged unmasked contact, because I mean the masks are very effective. So I think that prolonged unmasked contact is a problem.
Yeah.
So I would say, will I return to some things? Yeah, I've gone to some things, and I'll be, I've got 3 vaccines, and I'll have my 2 masks on, and I'll feel like I'm okay with being somewhere. I will not most likely not eat in a crowd or whatever, because I got to take the mask off for that. So I'll probably remain masked, got my shots, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times people just they want so desperately to get back to the norm that they are kind of have gotten kind of cavalier with it. They're hoping it. They just want it to just disappear so bad so they can get to the normalcy that they're taking unnecessary, doing things unnecessary that are not helpful. And because I've seen myself, I want to get back to the norm so much, and a lot of times I'm a hugger.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I go to funerals, and I went to the funeral. It was elbow to elbow, and everybody wants to hug you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what about that? What about that contact?
I think that once again, tightly masked, double mask, whatever. We certainly, the close contact, it can be a problem. But if you really look at it, most of the spread is going to be respiratory spread. It's really not going to be contact spread. It's mostly going to be respiratory spread. The problem is that, many times people have the mask on, but they're ineffectively masked because the mask is like here. Okay. And the nose is completely out. So if you're talking effective masking, and yes, that's going to be kind of look what I have right here. A face shield. Okay.
Okay.
They sent me some of those.
You want it home, huh?
Now they sent it to them. I've never had it on because I don't believe in them. But I think effective masking is one of the best things you can do if you end up having to be in a crowd.
Right, right. And like I said, my wife, she tells me double mask wherever you do the mask. Also, she says they also recommend Zoom gathering, which I've heard of that, which I think, you have to, Zoom gathering, I think is a good way to go. Mondrell Gary, he says, excellent information. How safe is it for churches to reopen?
Well, that's going to be, it depends on how, okay? Let's say, for instance, you've got a huge, sanctuary area, and people can reasonably keep at a distance and wear their mask, and if you've eliminated congregational singing and stuff like that, I think that that's a safer approach than if everybody is packed inside, no mask on, and everybody's singing. I don't think that's nearly as safe. So I think that each church has to kind of look and say, what can we do to be as safe as possible? I know there are some guidelines out from State Board of Health and things like that, size of gatherings and whatever. But if you can keep some space and wear a mask, that's going to be safer than if everybody is packed in with no mask on. And it's just, and also I think it really does have to do with your immunization rates. If you've got let's look at it. If you've got a huge packed congregation with very low immunization rates and no mask, I think you're asking for trouble.
Right. I think it's like a time bomb waiting to go off. And I know, unfortunately, a lot of preachers that are speaking against the vaccine, telling people don't take the poison. They're telling people that's poison. And I always say, I eat at restaurants and I get carryouts. For those, like, since you don't eat at restaurants, Doc, I'll get a carryout, and we don't really know who's back there cooking. We don't know what the secret ingredients are. We don't know what's out there. To a certain point, I guess you just have to have a little faith, I guess.
Well, the other thing is that I love when I talk to my saints and they say that, I say, you go back to the book of Exodus and children of Israel coming out of Egypt, and so you look at it and they said, okay, hey Lord, the serpents are biting the children of Israel and they're dying. Or it says, okay, make a serpent, put it on a stick and hold it up. If you look up at the serpent, you won't die. So
Right.
they were given something to do. God didn't take the snakes away. He didn't get rid of the snakes. He said, if you look up at this, if you're bitten, you won't die. Okay. But if you look in the book of Leviticus, there's all kinds of like medicinal things they had to do to remain safe out there. So this concept, even back to the basic, I don't know what significance necessarily, and I'm going to get theological, but I'm just saying, hey, all I know is the death angel's coming through, and if you don't have this blood of the lamb on your doorpost, your firstborn will die. Okay. You were given a task to do something.
So true.
So if God says the salvation is coming in the task I gave you to do, and you don't do it, well, that's on you after that. And so I can't imagine. We've had vaccines forever. So next time you go for surgery, don't take any anesthetic because you don't want that chemical injected in your body. When they go to pull out that wisdom tooth, don't take that Novocaine. You don't want it. So all of this stuff is not.
Well, I hope they know. I hope they know you're just saying that because, boy, you don't want to take no wisdom tooth. I just had a wisdom tooth. You don't want to not take no pain medicine, no wisdom tooth. That's for sure.
But who would do that? Who would say, no, doc, just go ahead and pull it out? No
Not
one.
too many.
So you would inject that chemical that's going to block that nerve. Okay,
Right.
So that was created by a scientific process to be safe, to block that nerve, to allow that to come out. So my thing is, what's the difference? And that's why I can't understand, what all this angst about. What's the difference? We've been taking things we didn't know what we're in forever. I guarantee you, most people can't tell me the chemical compound of Tylenol. You can't tell me the chemical compound of ibuprofen. But when you get that headache, you go certainly take one. And
Exactly.
it doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes.
Well, Doc, we're gonna wrap it up. But listen,
Okay.
you are a pediatrician.
Mm-hmm.
You're a singer. You're an actor. You're a writer. Sounds like you got a little theologian in you. I don't know.
I've been in Sunday school. I've taught Sunday school for years, and I started out in Sunday school as far back as I can remember. I've been in Sunday school, so I try to stay in the Word when I can. So
well, you're doing a good job. But you brought up a good example when Moses told them, God told Moses have them to look at the rod, look at the serpent on the rod. Now, the problem was that Moses had later on had to grind it up and turn to pulp. And the only reason that was because the people looked at the stick as their salvation rather than the God of the stick. So
Right.
when we look at the shot as not being, it's a God that allow us to have a source of protection. And
Right.
so we don't look at that as our savior, but God gives men and doctors the knowledge and ability. See, here's two. We have some preachers telling people not to take this, but years ago we had some preachers were telling people not to even go to the doctor,
Right.
not to go to the eye doctor, don't get glasses.
Right.
And so they was talking about how sinful that was. So I wondered who these people who are saying how sinful this is, what about those glasses that you're wearing?
Absolutely.
What about the doctors that you're seeing?
Absolutely. I think if God had not meant for me to treat children, that he would have stopped me long ago. But
Right.
instead, he gave me every pathway to be able to study the science, to be able to treat children in the most effective way that I can. And he allows me to do it. He allows me to do it. I feel like I was called to do it, and he allows me to do it. So, yeah, my faith is strong.
Amen. Well, Dr. Yancey, it's just an honor to have you on here. You're a busy man. You have a lot of gifts, talent. Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. And I certainly appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this right here. Again, Dr. Yancey was my daughter's pediatrician. And he finally told my wife, who would bring our daughter there weekly. I guess you probably were able to go on quite a few vacations due to my wife, and you finally said, "Well, just take you some Pediasure. You don't have to come to the office." And I said, "Thank you, Doc, because you saved me some money because she was taking her to your office regularly." So, but I trusted you then, and I thank God for you. I thank God for the knowledge you have, and I thank God for you even taking the time to be on this program. Again, you share with us, you just recently wrote a book. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
It's called Cottonmouth. Okay.
Cottonmouth. Where did you get that title at?
When you read the book, you'll see. Oh, that's where that came from. Okay.
Okay.
But I'm from Louisiana, and occasionally we would run into a cottonmouth down there. So
all right. Well, you have to read the book.
So
you have to read the book to find out about Cottonmouth.
Yes, you got to go ahead and go on Amazon and get you one.
All right, then. Well, thank you once again. Again, those who are watching, feel free to share this right here, because I have a lot of people who do not watch the program live, but they'll come back and watch it later on. So share this right here with your friends, because this is some good information. This will dispel some of the misnomers, some of the negative information that's unsubstantiated that people are putting out there. And so we really appreciate that. And maybe we'll have to have you on again. I mean, you have so many hats. We can get you on as an author. We can get you on as a singer and actor. He really gets into acting, though. Up on this rock, you do a fantastic job.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And songwriter, too. You wrote that song. I didn't know that. So you gave me some information I didn't know. So thank you again. Again, thank those who are watching this episode of It's My Turn Now. You be blessed and be safe, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.